Good morning. Today we celebrate the 13th Sunday in Ordinary Time. Our Lord today is inviting us to love others and to remain faithful to Him and serve others as if we were serving Him, because whoever serves a disciple of Christ is serving Christ. And the Lord dwells in those around us, and especially in the poor. But first, let's go to the first reading. Today, the reading from the book of Kings, we have Elisha, who comes upon this woman and her husband. And the woman must be fairly wealthy because she has a house, and she's mentioned first before her husband, so she must have some prominent role, some wealth. And so they get used to having Elisha over and having him stay at their house. And it happens so much that eventually they build this room on top of the roof for his own private use. And so we see this great hospitality given by this woman and her husband. And what do we learn about this woman? She hasn't had any children. And so this would be a great difficulty for her, especially since this is what she has desired. And when Elisha asks his servant, what does this woman need? He says she has no children. And so, but we see from her actions, taking in Elisha and feeding him, providing for him, giving him a place to stay, she is treating him as if he were the Lord Most High. Since he is a prophet of the Lord, she is doing her duty by being hospitable. In the ancient Near East, hospitality was very important. And you always try to invite people in. That's why if someone were to refuse this, it would be a huge insult. And so this woman, she receives Elisha. And because of receiving him and helping him out, then her and her husband are given this gift of a child, the blessing of a child. But let's see, how could she have reacted? She could have been very bitter and angry with God for not giving her children. She could have. There's two ways. A lot of times we approach when we approach God when we realize He's not giving us what we want. We either think that God is punishing us, or we think that God doesn't care about us. And if a person continues down this path, then their attitude can not only become one of bitterness towards God, but it can also become one who is bitter towards anything that has to do with anything hinting of God. And so what this woman could have done is when Elisha, the prophet of God, comes to her house, she could have just sent him off scurrying, like, get out of here, scram. But instead she welcomes him. We don't see this bitterness and this anger towards Elisha because he's a prophet of God. Because she's not holding on any bitterness that we know of. There's no bitterness or anger she's having towards God. And this is how we're all called to face our hardships, the crosses that we face, is to just continually remain faithful to the Lord. And by remaining faithful to the Lord, that's where fruit will come. It's not saying we're going to get it instantly. It's not saying that we may even get all that we want and desire in this lifetime, because we were never promised complete happiness in this lifetime. But it's the lifetime to come. It's eternity that we place that longing and that fulfillment. Our hope is in the fulfillment of that longing for eternity. In the gospel today, our Lord Jesus says, whoever receives you receives me, and whoever receives me receives the one who sent me. Whoever receives a prophet because he is a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And whoever receives a man because he is righteous will receive a righteous man's reward. And then he goes even further. And whoever gives only a cup of cold water to one of these little ones to drink, because the little one is a disciple, amen, I say to you, he will surely not lose his reward. Notice he says lose his reward. Through our baptism, we already have this great inheritance. By living out the Christian life, by obeying the commandments, by loving our neighbor, loving God and our neighbor, we have this inheritance in heaven. But how do we lose that? By sinning, by mistreating those around us, by being prideful, selfish, by being bitter towards others and towards God. That's how we lose our inheritance. But how we come back to our Lord through the sacrament of reconciliation through the Eucharist. That's how we are reunited and given that strength. And so, in that passage of the gospel, whoever, you may have noticed, it says, whoever receives a prophet because he is a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. This woman, the rich woman of Shunem, received Elisha, the prophet of the Lord. And so I was thinking about this. What is the prophet's reward? What would be the greatest reward for a prophet? Yes, probably peace and prosperity. Yes, but they're beyond that, because the fact that they're a prophet, I mean, there's a lot easier occupations to do than being a prophet for the Lord in the Old Testament. So the greatest reward, I think, for a prophet would be to see life and salvation and a returning of the people of Israel to the Lord. That would be the prophet. So this life, because whenever the people sin, they're exiled or they're conquered in battle. So there's death, there's enslavement. But the reward of the prophet, if the people return to the Lord, is life. And so we see that this woman and her husband are given life. And in this case, it's the life of a child to bring happiness in their home, to continue their family. And so we ask today that our Lord help us. Let us ask our Lord Jesus in the Eucharist to help us to remain faithful to Him and to treat others with a true joy and a servant's heart, to see the people around us and to treat them as if they were Jesus, our Lord Jesus Himself. And so let's ask our Lord to give us this desire to serve our neighbor and to love our God and to remain faithful to Him in all that He calls us to do. For the inheritance is ours. All that we have to do is to accept and live the Christian life the way our Lord has commanded. Have a blessed Sunday. Take care.